What's going on YouTube? Got my league starter for 3.23 Affliction. I think this is what I'm going to go with, and we are going to be going with a Poison, Blade Vortex, Blade Blast. As you all know, um, they released the new skill gems, and one of them is the Blade Blast of Unloading, which basically is Blade Blast for Blade Vortex. And as you can see, it has an insane amount of flat fizz on it. So the goal here is we're going to start with a pretty standard poison blade vortex on an assassin. It'll be crit based, and that's what we'll use to level, right? And there's nothing crazy here. This is all something you guys could follow and something you've seen in the past. Blade vortex got a buff in the sense that it got more flat damage, and it also got a higher hit rate. So it should be pretty good. Damage from these numbers is pretty nice. We've got a combined DPS of 7 mil on items that are, we don't have anything crazy. I mean, the iron points themselves, these will probably be a little bit expensive early league, but the rest of these are all fairly attainable. A Dendrobate, Azanath for temp chains, and Ungol's Harmony eventually, which a lot of these will be replaced with better rares, but it's often nice. I really like to start damage over time with on a build that uses a few common uniques and things like that. And again, maybe the unique pool, maybe it'll be different this league. I don't know, but generally speaking, these uniques are not super difficult to obtain. And in the first week or so of the league, the cold points might be a divine or two, but the rest of these should be pretty cheap and may even be I might even be able to find them on my own. The Azanaths might be a little much too, a divine or two right off the rip, but they are fairly common, and so I'm not super worried about that. It's series promise, and then everything else, all the other item on this, as you can see, items on this are all pretty medium rolls. I didn't put anything crazy on here. All the resist rolls are low. Movement speed, life, they're all just mid rolls on here. But what we're going to be doing is we'll have two curses, despair and temp chains. Temp chains will allow for our poisons to expire more slowly, so we'll be able to stack more. So again, this isn't this the starter that I'm going with here is not anything that you guys probably haven't seen in the past, and it should be good to get me through, get all my watchstones and all that kind of stuff. Um, and I'll get into the build a little more specifically in case you're interested in running it, but I also wanted to get into where I want to take it, and this is where you guys might actually be able to help me out a little bit. Because what I'd like to do is eventually end up switching over to right as of right now. I have Valblade Vortex in my 6 link, and then I have Blade Blast in a 4 link. And right now, as I start this Blade Blast, this would kind of typically take over for a cast while damage taken setup or something like that. So I may use cast while damage taken in this 4 link just for some survivability while I level, until I can get the new skill gems and I can kind of figure out what I want to do to convert into the new Blade Blast gem. That again, we don't know how easy these are going to be to obtain. Maybe they're fairly rare, maybe not. Maybe we'll be able to get into it right away, but I don't want to plan to use the new skill gems right off the rip just in case they're not that easy to obtain. So I am going to start with something a little more standard with items that I know I'll be able to get my hands on. So kind of going back, we use a lot of defensive auras. We have Herald of Agony, but otherwise, we want Purity of Elements and Grace for some evade chance. We want to get this up a little bit, and as we get better gear, they shouldn't be too hard to get up. And then we have, spell suppression capped at 100 fairly easily. So that'll be our first goal, and then next we'll try to boost this evasion up. And again, this is not end game gear. This is all fairly attainable gear. So, the numbers are pretty good. Damage looks good just based on these kind of low numbers. We're using Plague Bearer. Obviously, we have Empower in here. based on, being able to obtain these exceptional gems from the lab, maybe these will be easier to get our hands on. Again, Empower isn't super difficult. A level 3 isn't super difficult to get your hands on in the first, 3-4 days if you make it into red maps and do all that kind of stuff. Again, pretty standard. Wither totems for bossing DPS. Withering Step for elusive, Whirling Blades, fast attacks, and Fortify just for a little bit of defense. Since Whirling Blades is a melee, we can, you only get a few stacks here and there, but, it still helps with some defensive capabilities. And then obviously Temp Chains, Despair on Ring, and then we have the explosion from Azanath's Touch Gloves. So as you can see, nothing crazy here. Critical Strike Affliction. This might be replaceable, but I've kind of always wanted to use this, so we're gonna give this a try this time around. And then Void Manip, Unbound Ailments, Unleash, and Deadly Ailments. And then, again, we kind of went through these already. The, and with these, like, the Lion Pelt, you'll be able to put increased mana res and, all the Eldritch implicits and all that kind of stuff. But again, I wanted to leave them off just so that I could make sure I had an attainable build that didn't need completely min-max gear that was still going to do a bunch of damage. Life, again, 4,100, but all the rolls on these are very minimal. 39 health on a. This one has 78, but some of these just don't have much on them. This is just a generic jewel I threw in, nothing crazy. As far as these go, the crimson jewels and whatnot, we'll be looking for just life and, poison duration is nice, or increased damage with poison, crit strike multi, crit strike chance, all that kind of stuff. So again, nothing crazy on these. So this is kind of where we're headed for now. The flasks, again, nothing crazy. Eventually, we'll want, like, probably a bottled faith and, maybe even a cinder swallow and things like that. But for now, this is what we're going to do on league start. And just to kind of explain the tree here, obviously we've got a cluster set up here for, if we do want to, eventually make the move into a cluster. But what I plan on doing is we'll probably come right out of the gate here. We'll take some of this damage stuff, and then honestly, we'll probably, work our. We'll wait on the crit stuff. We'll take kind of the more generic damage. We'll take crit strike chance, but fizz, damage over time. There's some more damage over time stuff here. Chaos damage. We'll probably come down around here and grab some more of this poison stuff. And as we're doing that, we'll just kind of make the decision as we go to take some life and some damage. And it's pretty scattered through this tree, where it's pretty balanced in the sense that we pass a lot of life and damage nodes as we're kind of moving through. But like I said, we'll kind of wait on the crit stuff for a while. Depending on when we get our cursed ring, which the ring will probably come after the gloves, I would assume. So we probably won't need Whispering Dooms right off the rip. Eventually, we come up to Eldritch Battery so that we use Energy Shield instead of mana. With that being said, maybe at some point we will want to switch to Devouring Diadem that come from the Syndicate that allows us to do that just through our helmet, and then we'll have to move around some spell suppression, things like that. But again, like I said, there's nothing crazy about this build. We come down for some skill effect duration just to kind of keep our Blade Vortex up a little bit longer and not have to cast it as much, and that's about it, right? So if we go into the calculation, we've got basically right now with temp chains and all the increased poison duration and all that kind of stuff, about 7.6 seconds per poison, which will allow us to stack about 57 stacks, which is a lot. That's a lot of stacks, and that's a pretty decent amount of damage. I don't know if we'll be able to get it up that high all the time, but even if we're getting, I think on my configuration we have this is just with 30 poisons on the enemy, right? So if potentially you were able to get it up to, oh wait, yeah, is that making a difference? That's not making a difference. So maybe so again, that's just with 30, stacks of poison on there. This is these numbers are against a Guardian Pinnacle boss. And then again, I didn't throw a whole lot of stuff in here. A little bit of Fortify, Arcane Surge, flask active, again, so there's nothing crazy here that is really making our DPS shoot through the roof as far as the numbers go. So these numbers should be fairly accurate for league start. Again, we also have, with uh, our auras, we also have purity of elements, so we're immune to all elemental ailments. We don't have to worry about freeze, shock, ignite, all that kind of stuff. So that'll be really helpful. And my focus was to kind of go, like I said, with defensive auras, and then kind of grab more damage and whatnot out of the tree. We might need to shift a little DPS into the tree depending on how it feels. And then again, this Blade Blast might stay as a cast, or might be used as a castle damage taken setup, depending on how survivability feels as we start getting into reds. But now, so like I said, all of this is very followable. If you're interested in running this, like this you'd be fine running this, and it'll be a good league start, very powerful. The question is what I actually want to get into, right? And then this is where, like I kind of mentioned earlier, where I may be interested in, hopefully you guys will have a little bit of insight, or maybe you guys have some cool ideas that you can pass along. And the reason being is what I would like to eventually do is basically swap the gems, right? What I would like to do is put the blade vortex in a 4-link, right? And again, this is just what's in here now. Whether this is the best way to do it or not, but the goal, what I would like to do is somehow automate Valblade Vortex, right? And get it up as quickly as possible or as easily as possible, and then use Blade Blast in the 6-link to basically get those massive detonations, right, of the blades from Blade Vortex. And what I'm really curious about is whether or not Blade Blast will also detonate the Val Blade Vortex, right? Because again, if you're getting increased AoE with each blade, right, at its base gem level, you get, 1100 to 1600 physical damage, right, per blade. And if, the basic blade vortex has 10 blades, but if you're able to also detonate the Val, that will take you up to 20 blades, right, with each blade expanding on its AoE. You might be able to get some insane clear, right? This is what I'm really excited about. And again, we want to, I'll reiterate, we want to start with a more standard build just so we know, before we know how easy it is or difficult it is to obtain these new skill gems, right? So if we can have this detonating 20 times, again, and this is at level 20, if we're using cold iron points, it's going to boost it up to, what, 2 grand, maybe 2,300, something like that, a flat fizz, which is absolutely bonkers. So the goal would be to perhaps somehow automate either Valblade Vortex to get these up quickly, or Blade Blast once the once Blade Vortex has it's at its max blades, right? Once it's at 10, and then we can detonate them. And it might end up just being self-cast, but ideally, I thought, okay, maybe you could do a cast when damage taken setup, and then use something like the Covenant, right? So that every time, the bottom line is skills gain a base life cost equal to 100% of base mana cost, right? So for every Blade Vortex that we cast, it's 71 mana. It also costs 71 life. So, you're looking at 13 mana or life cost, which again is not enough to necessarily proc a level 1 cast when damage taken, which is 528 total damage from hits, right? So I'll have to find another way to, get to have it cost more damage, whether that be life tap or something like that. Or perhaps, you go with something like cast on crit, and I have whirling blades in here just because, in my head it's like, you self cast 3-blade vortex, dash into a pack that with whirling blades, that whirling blades crits, detonates all of your blade vortex, and then you again, and whether that play, and that's kind of why I don't necessarily know where I want to head with this, because I don't know if that's the best play. It doesn't sound like the most fun play style. Is to, cast 3-blade Vortex, dash in, detonate. Again, I think if it was powerful enough to detonate everything in the screen, and you only had to dash once, 3-blade Vortex, hit blade Vortex 3 times, dash, hit blade Vortex 3 times, and it was clearing screens, I think that would be suitable. Obviously, we don't know how powerful or how big the AoE is going to get, so it's hard to say if this would be suitable. But this is kind of the concept that I'm looking into, and like I said, because I'm not starting this, we don't know how easy it is going to be to get these gems. I'll be able to play with these maybe a week into the league, 10 days into the league, whatever, and kind of start figuring out what I can do with this blade blast, right? But this is kind of the concept, and again, you guys might have some cool stuff. I have never done a cast when damage taken build. Obviously I've had setups with Immortal Call or Steel Skin or whatever the case is, but I've never done anything that procs an actual skill, a damage dealing skill with cast when damage taken. So I know there's like the ward loops, and there's a million different ways to do it, but I don't necessarily know what the best way to do it. I personally, like I said, probably lean towards some cast on crit style build, just because if we get our crit chance to 100%, and that is with using ungles, if we throw on, here's a decent amulet that I crafted with +1 fizz and some crit chance and damage over time. We lose a lot of crit chance when we do that, right? So um that's basically where I'm at with this, boys, and I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to take it, but this is essentially the idea, right? And I want to keep it poison. Obviously, we left all this same stuff in here to remain poison. Is as we're detonating those blade blasts, we might just be able to get an obscene amount of poison damage, and we'll go from there. And with that flat base fizz being that high, there's a potential to put some really massive um, poisons onto the enemies, right? But so for now, again, this we might turn this into a cast when damage taken setup, or it might work nicely just as a kind of a boss, DPS single target, where we go in, put some poisons. Excuse me, sorry. We put some poisons on the boss, right, or on the single target, whatever we're working on, and then once we blade vortexes X amount of time, maybe we try to detonate them and get those nice powerful uh, poisons just to kind of cap it off, run around, recast blade vortex, and do it again, right? So again, this is kind of the question here, and what we're going to do with this. All the rest of this, the blade vortex, the rest of the build, like I said, is pretty standard stuff, nothing crazy, and like other builds you would have seen in the past that are BV, crit based poison builds. So but again, this is so we'll see, and please, by all means, I'm sure you guys will tell me how stupid I am, and I've done this wrong and this wrong, and that's fine. That's kind of, to some extent, that's what I'm looking for, and maybe some cool ideas if you guys have come up with anything or have any concepts that might work. I'm definitely interested to hear, because I don't necessarily know where I'm going to take it with all the new stuff and the new ascendancies. Again, this build allows me to get a bunch of damage and all that kind of stuff with everything that we already know exists in the game, and not including any of the new stuff, which will then allow us to kind of figure out where we want to go, which ascendancy we want to take, new ascendancy, and all that kind of stuff. I guess we didn't talk about this. Here's another option that you could swap around. As of right now, I have ambush and assassinate. It might be more beneficial early to take Mistwalker to gain the elusive. We use Withering Step, so we get it out of that. It's when you can get, again, it's obviously not as good as the Ascendancy version, but we have it here, and then we get so much crit chance out of ambush and assassinate that this might be more beneficial, at least on paper, right? But if you're having survivability issues, oh, we got a subscriber here. If you're having subscriber issue, if you're having survivability issues, Mistwalker might be nice as opposed to ambush and assassinate. But otherwise, the ones we will absolutely be taking is we will start with Noxious Strike. This will be the first ascendancy we take. And then we'll probably go Toxic Delivery just to help with that crit. Opportunistic, this will give us a little bit of survivability and, a little bit of damage against single target. And then, based on that, how we're feeling when we get to our last one. If I'm dying a ton, then maybe we go with elusive, but chances are we'll take ambush and assassinate. I would rather keep elusive out of the ascendancy and then, maybe spec into some more life or, kind of move things around, more evasion, whatever I can do to kind of help with survivability, but we'll try to get our elusive just from Withering Step. So I know I kind of bounced all over the place. I'll provide this path of building in the description below so you guys can kind of cruise through it and see if it's something you're interested in. Again, this is very viable league starter as far as the Blade Vortex version. The Blade Blast version, we'll see depending on obviously how easy to obtain the gems are and all that kind of stuff. But the numbers aren't too bad for terrible, not terrible, but for average gear. Obviously if we can get this up to 85 plus or so, which I don't think it'll be too difficult to be if we get a nice helmet and boots with big evasion and stuff on it like that. So that's it, guys. I don't have a ton. There is, again, if you guys are interested, I have some cluster setups in here of what I'll move to, mainly for this Unholy Might. It's just an obscene amount of damage. If you come in and look at Unholy Might, you get about 1 million, DPS out of that boost. So it's pretty massive. So again, we'll do stuff like that, but I don't want to get too in depth on where I'm headed with the build. This is just a league starter. This is what I'll be using for the first, week and a half of the build, trying to get all my watchstones, do all that kind of stuff, and then we'll basically make the changes or figure out where we're gonna go with the blade blast and the new gems, and get our hands on those. And once we have our uniques and all that kind of stuff, we'll be able to kind of figure out where we're going, and if we're going to use tinctures or we're going to use all that other stuff. But this will at least be a good base to get us to end game and into red maps, and you should be able to beat most of the stuff in the game, minus the Ubers and all that kind of stuff in week one, and that's not to say you can't, but this is mainly for obtaining, watchstones and getting my Atlas all filled out and getting all my, Atlas skill tree points, all that kind of stuff. And then we can kind of make our decisions of where we're going to go. Maybe we'll want to even just spec into, we'll eventually make another magic find this league. So, um, but yeah, guys, I don't want to ramble too long. This is the idea. If you guys have any cool ideas on what we could do for crit base, poison, blade blast, blade vortex, with the ascendancies, we cruised through the ascendancies and all that last night. There's some of the stuff that maybe we'll stack life and then base physical damage off of 75% of life and all that kind of. So there's some really cool stuff. But again, this is what I'm going to start with, and then we will kind of figure out where we're going to go with all of the new additions to the game a little bit down the road once we've kind of accomplished all of our initial tasks that we need to be doing for league start. So all right, I think I'll leave it at that. I rambled long enough. Please let me know in the comments below what you guys think. If you have any cool ideas, anything like that, and it would be much appreciated. And we'll see you on the next one. Stoked for League start. I'll be live on stream, first thing on Friday before League goes live, and we'll be getting the filter and everything set up. So if you guys are interested in, getting my League start filter and all that, we'll grab all of that before the league starts on Friday. And let me know what builds you guys are doing. If you guys have something cool that you guys have come up with, just let me know. I'm curious to know kind of what people are getting into. And we'll see you on the next one. Peace.